Okay, look at yourself in the mirror. Yeah, right in the eye. See that little fold of tissue in the inner corner of both of your eyes? Well, get ready for this. It was actually once a third eyelid or nictitating membrane. You can see it today in snakes or lizards, for example. The third eyelid was used for the same purpose as the other two, although it's unclear whether humans ever even had it fully grown. This membrane wasn't as thick as the two eyelids we have, and it could moisten the eye without obstructing the view. Right now, all we have left of it is this tiny fold in the corner of the eye, and most likely in the future we will lose it altogether. And maybe we'll finally stop waking up with that yucky crust that forms in our eyes overnight. Now, while you're still in front of the mirror, look lower. Lower, and lower still. Yeah, those are your toes. Say hello and goodbye. Scientists believe that, in some more or less distant future, we'll get rid of our toes completely. Our ancestors, the ancient primates, needed toes to climb trees more efficiently. They used both their hands and feet to grab tree branches. You can see it today in most monkeys and apes. They have longer and more flexible toes, along with flappier feet that allow them to get a hang on branches. Their feet mobility also lets them grab objects from the ground if necessary. For us humans, even lifting a pen we dropped on the floor with our toes is a complex task, but not for our primate relatives. Humans have evolved along a different route. We started walking upright and climbed down from trees, making rigid feet and shorter toes more of a necessity over time. Today, we still use our toes for balance when rolling from the balls of our feet to the tips of the toes, but our balance is now much more centered. It first moved towards our inner feet, which resulted in our pinky toes becoming so tiny, and the big toes, well, so big. As the balance moves away from the toes entirely, though, they're more likely to get fused together in the future. Now, turn around and look at your gorgeous behind. If you've ever fallen off a skateboard or slipped on an icy patch, you must remember what a terrible thing it is to hit that tailbone on a hard surface. Luckily for us, scientists predict it's going to go away pretty soon in the course of evolution. A tailbone is a feature that was left to us by our primate ancestors too. And yet again, they needed their tails to achieve more mobility among tree branches, using them to fling themselves from tree to tree. It's hard to say when humans dropped the tail to never pick it back up, but facts are facts. The only thing we have reminding us of those glorious tree-jumping days is the pretty useless bone at the lower end of our backs. Okay, back to the face now. Open your mouth and say, "Ah." If you're a lucky individual to have no wisdom teeth, then you can be proud knowing that you're a product of evolution going strong. As you might know, teeth are the only part of the human body that doesn't repair itself. So if you lost all your teeth back in the dark times with no dentist around, the only choice you had was to eat liquid food. Not cool. Dentists believe that nature gave us wisdom teeth as a replacement for old, worn-out teeth we've had since childhood. That's why they grow so late in our lives. Today, though, with all the progress dentistry has gone through, we tend to keep all or most of our teeth intact until a very old age. And even if we lose some, we can always replace them with new ones. That makes wisdom teeth a vestigial thing. And they seem to understand that, since more and more people never have to go through the ordeal of teething as grown-ups. Speaking of teeth, our entire jaw has been changing for the past, 10,000 years, and is predicted to change even more quite soon. In fact, it's been the fastest changer of all our body parts. Back in the day, when early humans survived by hunting and gathering, they needed massive, powerful jaws and bigger teeth to chew through raw meat and grind plants. As they came to cooking and then farming, their food became less tough, and so their jaws became smaller to fit the current needs. As time went by, our jaws shrank more and more, and they're likely to continue doing so in the future. With lots of processed foods that don't need much chewing, humans of the future are probably going to have more delicate facial features with thin jaw lines and smooth cheekbones. Some body parts are not going away, but making a comeback instead. 100 years ago, fabella, a tiny bone in the back of the knee, was only present in around 11% of people, and scientists thought it would disappear entirely pretty soon. But, against all odds, the brave little bone has made it into the knees of a whopping 39% of modern people. It's still unknown why exactly the fabella returned, but the most popular opinion is that we've grown taller and heavier than our ancestors. That much is true. As our diet became better and more nutritious, we learned to live longer and grow taller. We're now probably at the peak of our evolutionary height. And the fabella might have appeared in our bodies to provide a smooth surface for the tendon behind the knee to slide on, reducing friction and lowering the chances of damage because of wear and tear. Speaking of becoming bigger, let's get you back to that mirror, shall we? Flex a little bit. Ooh, nice biceps there. But unfortunately, not as nice as your ancient ancestors were. Not everything about evolution is 100% good for us. It's just a set of features that adapted best. And that's the case with our muscles. They've grown smaller and weaker with time, especially in our upper bodies. In ancient times, humans needed big and strong muscles to do a lot of handiwork. From hunting and schlepping their catch home to crafting tools and building shelters. Later, it didn't grow easier. Much the opposite. In fact, plowing fields and building complex structures required a lot of physical strength and endurance. But as the technological progress started booming, physical capabilities gave way to brain power. And machines began doing a lot of work for us, most of it even better than us. We shifted more towards sedentary lifestyle, spending more and more time in front of computers. And our muscles have been growing steadily smaller, because we simply don't need them as much anymore. It's highly likely that as the progress goes further, we'll become much slenderer and have more trouble gaining muscle mass. Our brain is of particular interest because it's been changing in a kind of a strange pattern. Our distant ancestors had a rather small brain at first, but the close relatives of humans, the Neanderthals, obtained a larger brain than the average modern human has. In the course of evolution, human brain grew larger. But in the more recent centuries, it started shrinking, and no one knows exactly why. Some experts say it might have to do with the change of our lifestyle and social connections. Early humans, especially hunter-gatherers, had to remember every plant and animal they saw, their properties, and how to use this or that thing. They were more generalist, having to learn everything their parents knew and find out more on their own. The modern human is more specialized in a certain area, delving deeper into some narrow subject while relying on their peers for the rest. Where ancient humans worked in groups in which anyone could potentially replace anyone else, we gather in teams, where each member has their own specific task and is irreplaceable. Still, brain size doesn't seem to matter that much, because orcas and elephants, for example, have bigger brains than us, which doesn't make them more intelligent. Happier? I'm guessing yes. And if we venture further into the unknown, meaning millennia from today, we might even develop some pretty unbelievable traits. Some go as far as to say that if the tendency for the sea levels to rise persists, humans might adapt to living in water. We might evolve to have webbed hands and feet to swim better, and develop gills to be able to breathe underwater. Or, if we go into space and start colonizing other planets, we will inevitably have to adapt to their conditions. Mars, for instance, has lower gravity and a much colder climate. It will probably make humans taller and lighter, but also may cause them to grow much more body hair to keep warm. And planets with stronger gravity and higher temperatures will, on the contrary, turn humans into stocky, sturdy, and likely hairless creatures. The possibilities are endless. Hey, maybe due to social media, we'll just turn into little blobs with big eyes and thumbs and not much else. So much better for texting. Hope not. People with a single palmar crease have just one line running across their palm, while the majority of the world's population has two. also called the simian crease. This feature is found only in 1.5% of the world's population. Men are more likely to have a single palmar crease than women. In most cases, it runs in families. Less than 50 people have ever had the Rh null blood type, dubbed golden blood. For the first time, this blood type was discovered in an Australian Aboriginal woman. This unique blood type is universal and can be accepted by anyone, even those with rare blood types within the Rh system. 3% of people all over the planet have lines creating the letter X on both their hands. This is a rare phenomenon, and in many cultures, this feature is believed to be a sign of a strong character. About 25% of people have an interesting reaction to sunlight. They sneeze. This phenomenon even has its own name, the photic sneeze reflex. In the Greek language, it's called sun sneezing. In some people, saliva accumulates in a gland under their tongue. Then it can get propelled out in a stream when a person presses on this gland. If the mouth is open at the moment, a jet can reach several feet. This process, called gleeking, can occur spontaneously. A person accidentally pushes their tongue against the gland while eating, yawning, talking, or cleaning their teeth, and voila! Up to 35% of people can gleek, but just 1% can do it on command. Less than 1% of the world's population has dextrocardia. That's a rare condition when the heart points toward the right side of the chest rather than the left side. Sometimes people with this unique feature have all their internal organs on the mirror image side of the body. Ocular albinism affects only a person's eyes. Their hair and skin are usually a bit lighter than that of their family members, but the difference isn't that dramatic. Albinism is a rare feature to have, but if it's ocular, that's even more unique. Experts don't have exact numbers, but they think between 1 person in 20,000 to 1 person in 50,000 have ocular albinism. You may have a tiny hole at the top of your ear where it meets the temple. If so, you're among 10% of the world's population. This hole is most commonly found on the right side, but some people have it on both of their ears. These holes may go all the way through, or they can be dimples, dents, or even small lumps. Around 65% of the world's population have loop-shaped fingerprints. In 30% of people, fingerprints are whorl-shaped, and only 5% of people have arch-shaped fingerprints. All these types are divided into smaller groups. For example, there might be plain or tinted arches, accidental whorls, or peacock's eye, and so on. Hey, who knew? Most people have 12 pairs of ribs, which makes 24 in total. But 1 in 200 people has an additional 25th rib. Called cervical, it forms at the base of the neck above the collarbone. It can grow on the left, right, or even both sides. Those with extra ribs most likely know nothing about this modification. That's because an extra rib rarely forms completely and can look like a thin strand of tissue. In this case, you won't even see it on an X-ray. If you have a circular hair whorl on your head, it's likely to be clockwise. Some scientists think there's a genetic link between hair whorl direction and handedness. A bit more than 8% of right-handed people have counterclockwise hair whorls, but in the left-handed, this number grows up to 45%. When you're asked to clasp your hands, which finger do you put on top? If it's the right thumb above the left one, you're among 50% of the world's population. 49% of people position their left thumb above the right, and a mere 1% place their thumbs next to each other. Red hair occurs naturally in a mere 1 to 2% of the world's population. Most often, redheads have northern or northwestern European origin. This color is caused by a genetic mutation. The hue can vary from bright copper and auburn to red-orange and strawberry blonde. Only 3 to 22% of people in the world have Morton's toe. It's a foot structure when the second toe is longer than the first one. Michelangelo's David and the Statue of Liberty both have this unusual body feature. And they aren't even alive. Oops, spoiler, sorry. Only 2 people out of every 10,000 have an unusually shaped pupil. Most commonly, it resembles a keyhole. This eye disorder is called coloboma. Luckily, people with this condition don't usually have any problems with their vision. On second thought, it's not so rare. All of my teachers thought I was an unusual pupil. Having different colored eyes, heterochromia is a rare body feature that occurs in less than 1% of people. It can be complete, then a person has eyes of two different colors, for example, one brown and one blue. A person can also have a differently colored ring around the pupil. It's central heterochromia. And partial heterochromia is when a part of one iris has a different color from the rest of it. People with dystichiasis have one more row of eyelashes. This phenomenon is a genetic mutation. It's not harmful in any way, but can cause some discomfort. A hair can grow where an oil gland is supposed to be on the wet part of the eyelid. Then it causes irritation and tearing. There are people who don't have to stress over how much calcium they consume. They have a rare mutation in the LRP5 gene. It gives them mega-dense bones almost unable to break. One of the few drawbacks of this condition, such people have difficulty staying afloat while swimming. Some women have supercolor vision, tetrachromacy, thanks to special cells in their eyes. These cells are called cones, and a regular person has 3 types of them. But tetrachromats have 4 cones. It allows them to see 100 million different colors. The TEC2 gene lets people work more and sleep less. Nikola Tesla, Winston Churchill, and Margaret Thatcher all had this unusual feature. The gene basically allows a person to go through their sleep cycle in less time than regular people need. Another gene mutation helps people keep their bad cholesterol levels extremely low. The gene gives your body instructions for producing a protein that controls the amount of cholesterol in your blood. Unfortunately, only 2 to 3% of people have this useful feature. Only 4% of people have an outie belly button. Several factors, like the fat distribution around your waistline or genetics, determine which kind of belly button you'll end up with. Genetics play a crucial role even in your taste buds. Up to 25% of the population are super tasters. They have more visible taste papillae, those are tiny dots littering your tongue, than regular tasters. This extra option makes them more sensitive to certain foods, for example, sweet, bitter, or salty. Super tasters also have more pain receptors on their tongue. That's why they shy away from spicy food. When wisdom teeth try to break through the gums, they often run out of space and have to be taken out. Around 5 million people go through such surgery every year. But 35% of the world's population don't have to worry about pain and inconvenience. They lack wisdom teeth altogether. Long palm muscles helped our ancestors to climb trees. Even though most of us don't need this option anymore, some people are still born this way. You can check whether you have these muscles by putting your palm on a flat surface and touching your thumb to your pinky. If they do exist, they'll pop out of your wrist. Scientists claim Tibetans are genetically mutated to be able to live at such high altitudes. One of their genes is responsible for fast adapting to falling oxygen levels. The same gene is also linked with improved endurance in athletes. By the way, it was one of the fastest evolutionary mutations ever recorded in people. It developed in less than 3,000 years. Gray eyes are an incredibly rare body feature. Only 1% of the human population are born with gray eyes. Such people have low levels of melanin in the front part of their irises. Blue eyes are also not as common as you might think. Just 8 to 17% of people have them. An even rarer thing is a combination of red hair and blue eyes. If a person is born like this, it means both their parents carried these genes for a child to have. We, human beings, have been evolving for 6 million years, but we're still not perfect. Turns out that our bodies have a bunch of design flaws. First of all, human eyes have tiny blind spots, never mind the philosophical ones. Such a spot is about the size of a pinhead. It's located at the point where the optic nerve passes through the surface of the retina at the back of the eye. Your optic nerves connect your eyes to the brain. They carry images for your brain to process. This is how you see. In the spot where these nerves leave your eye, though, there's a lack of something called photoreceptors. These receptors detect light and are the reason you can see. Without them, your eyes wouldn't be able to send any signals to your brain to describe what you're looking at. But because there are no photoreceptors there, you've got a tiny blind spot in each of your eyes. If people were designed perfectly without this flaw, they'd have eyes just like octopuses. It may sound weird, but the eyes of these creatures are eerily similar to humans. But their optic nerves run behind the retina. This means that the nerves don't have to leave the eye at any point, so there's no gap that causes the blind spot in human eyes. What else? Around 65 million Americans complained about having issues with their back, and this is because of evolution. Just like dogs, humans used to walk on all fours. When people were walking on their hands and knees, the curve of their spine was pretty much perfect, and all their organs felt comfortable. Because of this, there was never any pressure on their backs. Well, we evolved to start walking on two legs to save energy. The search for food took longer and longer, and when walking on two legs, people saved 25% of energy. But this was bad news for people's backs. Because this way, their spines were basically forced to turn into a column to support all the weight and make space for other organs. But if your spine was completely straight, you wouldn't be able to walk on two legs. So it evolved to become curved. But this puts a big amount of pressure on your lower back. So basically, to get rid of our pesky back problems, you should start walking on all fours again. That'll work. Make no bones about it, people have too many bones in their feet. We have all these bones because our ape-like ancestors needed them to grab onto tree branches. Now people aren't swinging from trees anymore, but we still have all those bones, which makes us prone to damaging them, and this can be extremely uncomfortable. Think about how many times you've stubbed your toes. If we were designed perfectly, our feet would look like those of an ostrich. These birds have way fewer bones, and the parts that look like knees turned backwards are actually their ankle joints. This makes ostriches less prone to injuries and also helps them run fast. Wow, if people were designed this way, it would make the Olympics way more interesting. I'd sure watch. Now, chew on this one. Human teeth are also far from perfect. People spend so much money on preserving them. At the same time, no other animal has to visit a dentist as we do. Also, once our teeth are permanently damaged or fall out, we can't grow new ones. Sharks are the opposite. They have an endless supply of teeth. In some shark species, a new set of teeth develops every 2 weeks. Kangaroos also have way better teeth than people do. If we were designed perfectly, we'd probably have the same teeth as our bouncing buddies. Once their teeth wear down, they fall out, and their rear teeth migrate forward. That's not the only issue we have with our teeth. Our mouths are way too crowded. Hey, I normally have a foot in mine. In the process of evolution, the human brain grew dramatically, and our jaws had to become wider and shorter to make room for it. But this left almost no room for our wisdom teeth. In the past, wisdom teeth were helpful when people needed to break down food, but as we learned to cook and process food, these teeth weren't needed anymore. So, in short, people should just get rid of them completely. And this may actually be happening. Around 25% of people, mostly Eskimos, are now born without some or all of their 4 wisdom teeth. Now, it happens that our knees are quite impractical too. It's the most complex joint in the body. It's sandwiched between 2 massive levers, which is already pretty risky. The knee only moves forward or backward, which doesn't make it a very secure construction. That's why there's a bunch of rules in many kinds of sports, like soccer or rugby, that forbid hitting an opponent's knee from the side. To make people better suited to their new sporty lifestyle, the hinge-like mechanism of the knee could be replaced with a ball and socket. This would be like the structure you have in your shoulders and hips. Friends, Romans, countrymen, waggle your ears. Yep, like dogs and cats, some humans can waggle their ears. These lucky ones can move their ears independently thanks to special muscles called extrinsic ear muscles, but those serve literally no purpose, apart from providing a cool party trick. Speaking of design flaws, human voice boxes are in the completely wrong place. Your windpipe, thanks to which you can breathe, and your food pipe, which is, you guessed it, where the food goes, open into the same space. This space extends from your nose and mouth down to your voice box. You have a little leaf-shaped flap that covers the opening to your voice box whenever you swallow. It prevents food from going into your windpipe. But this mechanism isn't always fast enough. If you're talking while eating, it's incredibly easy for the food to slip down and accidentally go into your airway, and you definitely don't want that. The whale's voice box is designed much more wisely. It's located in its blowhole, away from its mouth. If people could move their voice box into their nose, they would have 2 separate tubes, and there would be no risk of choking. But there would be a downside. We wouldn't be able to talk. But we could communicate through singing instead, like our whale friends. We'd be able to do this by producing vibrations in our noses.
Kinda like this. Don't I sound better? Hey, leave me a comment below.
You like ribs? I love them. But we're not talking about those kind of ribs. Some of us humans have an extra 13th set of ribs. Between 1 and 3% of the world's population have these ribs, called cervical, and they serve absolutely no purpose. Some people have just one of such ribs on the left side or the right side of their body, and others have cervical ribs on both sides. Now, you don't really need your appendix. It may contain some useful bacteria to help when you have stomach issues, but apart from that, it's not really necessary. The worst thing is that the appendix can get easily inflamed. The appendix was originally designed to help people digest cellulose, which is found in most green plants. This was back when people's diet mainly consisted of plants and almost no animal food. So, I say, let's get rid of it. Moving on. Blood is delivered from your heart to all the tissues of your body through thin pipes called arteries. The blood flows into each of your arms and legs through one large artery. For your arms, this artery is located at the biceps, and for your legs, it's in the front of the thigh. But your back needs blood too. And still, instead of having a large artery at the back of your body, you have smaller ones branching out and bundling around your bones and nerves. This is really impractical and makes people pretty susceptible to glitches, which is why you often get numb arms or legs. Bummer. How about something humorous? Take a look at your elbow. There, a branch of the artery meets up with something called the ulnar nerve. Thanks to this, you can move your pinky fingers. This is also why, when you bang your funny or humorous bone, your arm goes all numb and tingly. Ow. To fix this, we really need one more large artery in the back of our body near the shoulder blades. This extra pipe would provide the blood with a more direct route. This would also stop your arms and legs from going numb when you bump them in the wrong place. Finally, there's this tail. People still have a tailbone, even though there's no tail in sight. For our ape-like ancestors, the tail was incredibly helpful. They used it to balance themselves while jumping from one high branch to another. Now that we live in actual houses, most of us don't swing through trees anymore. The tailbone, whose official name is the coccyx, is easily fractured, so currently it's just a design flaw. Researchers also claim that removing it would improve posture issues too. Now, if you need to sleep at least 8 hours just to be able to do something during the day, hey, I'm with you on that one, bud. But if you can sleep for less than 6 hours and still function without any trouble, chances are you're lucky to have short sleeper syndrome. It's a genetic condition that allows you to sleep much less than other people and not regret it at all. Better yet, there are no known side effects to it, so it's an all-around win. On a similar note, you ever wake up and look at your tousled hair with frustration? And now imagine having this disheveled look forever and not being able to do anything about it. It's called the uncombable hair syndrome. Your hair's always sticking out every which way, and no amount of water or hair gel can tame it. Luckily, it usually happens in kids and passes all by itself as they reach teenage years. Still, what an excuse to never waste time combing your hair in the morning. A second pair of arms would come in handy in a lot of situations, but an extra pair of fingers might be helpful too. About 1 in every 500 people is born with 6 digits on either hand. Hey, give me a high 6! In most cases, the extra fingers are considered useless and removed, but research has shown that those who left them could do lots of everyday things with just one hand, like tying their shoelaces or playing video games with game pads. Hey, I wonder if this is the next stage of human evolution after all. I guess buying gloves could also be challenging. If something doesn't seem right to you in this hand, it's because it has a triphalangeal thumb. About 1 in 25,000 people are born with the thumbs on their hands having 3 phalanges or bones instead of the usual 2, giving their hands a very extraordinary look. And when it happens in combination with 6 fingers, which isn't too rare by the way, the picture is even more cryptic. Such a condition doesn't bring much discomfort. In fact, some actions are even easier done with a thumb that has an extra phalange. Imagine falling from the roof of a 10-story building and getting away with a few bruises and scratches, but no broken bones whatsoever. Such a genetic anomaly was discovered back in 1994. It makes a person's bones about 8 times denser than normal, which basically makes them indestructible. There was a case where a man had gotten in a serious car crash and not only survived, but had not a single fracture. What's even better, for him at least, is that the feature seems to be hereditary. It means he could pass it down to his kids, and they'll become unbreakable too. The next condition wouldn't give you any unusual abilities, but it looks beautiful. Heterochromia makes your eyes 2 different colors, say one hazel and the other blue. It has to do with the levels of melanin in your body, a pigment that affects the color of your skin, hair, and yes, your eyes. There's also partial heterochromia, when only a part of one of your eyes is differently colored. It's not too common in humans, but I bet you've seen it in dogs, huskies in particular. This breed is naturally predisposed to this condition, and I think it looks super cool. You've probably heard that cholesterol doesn't do much good for your body, and it's usually hard to get rid of it. Well, there are people who have a natural immunity against it. A specific gene in their bodies doesn't allow cholesterol to pile up in their blood, and so they can easily avoid most troubles it may otherwise cause. Too low levels of it might be an issue as well, but in most cases, it's not inhibited, just kept at bay. Our eyes allow us to see millions of colors and shades thanks to 3 types of cones inside of them. Each type is responsible for seeing a range of shades between the 3 primary colors, red, green, and blue. But there are people who have an extra cone type. They're called tetrachromats, and we can't even start to imagine what the world looks like to them. They see millions more shades than others do and can show you the difference between 2 virtually similar colors. Interestingly, most mammals used to have 4 types of cones in their eyes in the distant past, but lost one in the process of evolution. A less impressive, but not less rare condition is the so-called double crown. Now, a crown is that patch of hair on top of your head that goes in a spiral. It's pretty hard to miss if you have short hair, especially because it's the hardest part to smooth down. Yeah. People normally have 1, but there are unlucky individuals to have 2, and double the smoothing trouble. Still, some believe having a double crown is, on the contrary, a sign of good luck or even high intelligence. If you ever wanted to meet a real-life Superman or Supergirl, seek a person with inactive myostatin protein. That's a real genetic anomaly that makes a person super strong. Their muscles grow without inhibition from early age. Kids with inactivated myostatin develop physically much faster than their peers, and when grown up, they can achieve superior athletic success. This condition was first observed in cows. Some bovines grew to be exceptionally muscular with little signs of body fat. Turns out humans can be just like that as well. Climbing mountains is not only physically difficult, but also tough on the lungs. Breathing becomes harder the closer you get to the sky because the air is thinner up there. Well, not so much for the Tibetans though. Research has shown that mountain dwellers have an exclusive genetic mutation. They can easily breathe the thin mountain air as if they were in a valley. This also makes them extremely hardy, being able to do much more hard work than regular people. That's why the gene responsible for this adaptation is also called the super athlete gene. The rarest genetic condition there probably is, called the golden blood, can be a lifesaver for millions of people. There are just 40 known carriers of this blood type in the world. They don't have any Rh blood antigens, which means anyone can accept their blood, even those with extremely rare blood types. And although their blood isn't golden in color, it's certainly worth more than just gold. Now, if you remember Elizabeth Taylor, you probably also recall how beautiful and expressive her eyes were. That was in part thanks to a rare genetic disorder, double eyelashes. A small number of people around the world have 2 rows of eyelashes instead of 1, making them look just gorgeous. On the downside, the second row might get into the eye, causing irritation. So sometimes people with this condition have to pluck the excess eyelashes. Identical twins are rare enough themselves, but there's a super rare occasion of different twins. Even when they're born from the same egg, sometimes kids don't even resemble each other. In some cases, even skin color can be different. Such kids are often born to mixed-race couples. One of the twins could inherit a gene for white skin, for example, and the other a gene for dark skin, and voila! Vitiligo is a condition that makes the skin, hair, and nails lose color in patches because of the lack of melanin. About 2% of all people in the world have this disorder, and surprisingly, it's become something of a fashion trend nowadays. There are several successful fashion models who have vitiligo, and you can't argue that they look magnificent. Cleft chin, just like dimples on the cheeks, looks adorable, and it's also a genetic mutation. It appears when the bones or muscles in the lower jaw don't fuse completely during the baby's development inside the womb. It's hereditary, but if you have a cleft chin, it doesn't mean your kids will have it too. There are environmental factors that can prevent it from developing. If vitiligo means you have a partial lack of melanin, albinism is a condition where this pigment is absent from your body altogether. Very few people have it, and they look completely out of this world with their snow-white skin, hair, eyelashes, and pale blue or gray eyes. Animals can have it too. There are particularly marvelous cases of albino peacocks, and even crocodiles that are completely white. Another type of albinism is called ocular albinism. The difference is that it only affects the eyes. The pigment is lacking in the irises, making the eyes look wonderfully alien. The downside is that the lack of melanin makes the eyes really sensitive to light. So people with this condition have to take great care of their sight.